morning, everyone. All right, it's 8 o'clock. Thank you all for joining us today. I'd like to welcome you to our second legislative breakfast. Can you hear me okay? Is there an echo? No, okay, we're good. Just honored to have all of our legislators here today. This is such an important opportunity for us to all come together. Also want to thank our generous sponsors. The gold sponsors are Better Real Estate, Union Bank, Passumpsic Bank, and Vermont State University. Our bronze sponsors, Valhalla and the Better Business Bureau. And our legislative breakfast sponsors, which are North Country Assessment and the Vermont Economic Development Association. Your commitment to the economic vitality and well-being of our region is truly appreciated. Also want to thank the Athenaeum for welcoming us into their beautiful space. This is a great venue for this event. I'm really excited to be here again. And also Kingdom Access Television. They make so many events accessible to the public, and really grateful for their being here today. Today's breakfast is an opportunity to come together, to listen and engage in thoughtful dialogue. I will get us just rolling. There's so many questions to be asked. So thank you again for being here. And I will again just start us off with our legislators to give a brief rundown of their priorities right now, trying to keep it to as short as possible so that we can leave as much time for questions as possible. So John, would you get us started this morning? So we can shift, and so we have the mic there.
Recording in progress.
Oh. I don't know if that's, sorry, I don't know about that. But I needed that to be for the audio to start, so I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Caledonia District, which there's 10 towns there, and I want to thank Laura Lee for providing the short message I had to provide last time. I was away just due to illness here. I'm all better now. But I do represent Burke, and it goes up into East Haven, and Granby, and Victory, and Guildhall, and Lunenburg, and Maidstone, Brunswick, Bloomfield, and Ferdinand. I believe that's all of them. So a large district here to represent. I was appointed to serve on the Appropriations Committee this year in the House. It's a real honor to serve on that committee. It's a very busy committee here. We spent the first major part of the session here working on the Budget Adjustment Act. There we go. There we go. That's better. Sorry about that. Working on the Budget Adjustment Act, which is an exercise that the House goes through every year, as well as the Senate here, to take a look at where budgets are here. It's a check-in period about halfway through the current fiscal year to kind of true things up. On occasion, an agency or department may overspend a little bit just based on estimates or projects they're working on here. Other departments don't spend as much as what may have been appropriated to them. So it's a truing up of that. We've finished our work in the House, and our work has been passed over to the Senate, and I know that they've recently reviewed that, and we'll be seeing that here this week. Currently here, for the last couple of weeks, we've been receiving budget presentations from all the departments and agencies here to take a look at what they're proposing for their budgets for the next fiscal year coming up. We're nearly done with all of our meetings, and this coming week we'll begin to work on the marking up the budget for the next fiscal year, and that'll take some time here for us to work through. But certainly we are gathering lots of good information from all the departments and agencies. One question we've been asking, just so folks are aware here, we've been asking each one of the departments and agencies to let us know if they're feeling any current or if they anticipate potentially feeling any impacts here from changes on the federal side of things, because a significant amount of financing here comes from the federal side here, especially for the Agency of Human Services, Transportation, and others. So while a few things have been paused here temporarily here, I think our agencies are doing well. They're in the process of monitoring and tracking what's going on at the federal level, and with any federal funds that they have received through grants here, they are certainly paying attention to drawing down on time what they have received. So thank you very much, and happy to answer questions later on.
Thank you.
Oh, you can keep it. I'm Sam Douglas. I represent the Senate District for Orleans County, and that includes towns in Franklin County, as well as 4 towns from this area: Sutton, Sheffield, Newark, and Burke, like John. I am lifelong Vermonter from the Northeast Kingdom. I currently live in North Troy. I work in suicide counseling and crisis intervention for Lamoille County Mental Health. So a lot of different counties that I'm engaged in with my life. I was appointed to the Senate Health and Welfare Committee, so we're currently dealing with rising healthcare costs, rising premiums, and issues in solvency with our insurers. There's a lot going on in that committee, which I can go into some detail into, but I will be here probably for a couple hours if I do. So yeah, broad overview, health and welfare. There's a lot going on, and as many of us are aware, the issues with healthcare have not been getting better over the last couple of years in terms of pricing, as I think Laura Lee can understand. I was also appointed to the Senate IT and Institutions Committee. So traditionally, that has just been the Institutions Committee. We deal with government buildings, prisons, and the capital bill that's issued every other year. So a lot of money that gets thrown around in that committee. It's one of the money committees that's not really talked about as much as appropriations or finance or ways and means. But we've also now been given the additional responsibilities of IT, information technology. So right now we are dealing with a bill for age design restrictions on social media. But we also will be dealing with bills regarding data privacy and stuff like that. So anything that's computer or software related will now be referred to IT and institutions. Really my big focus right now is just the affordability question. So my district is primarily very rural, primarily fairly poor. And a lot of people are finding it really, really hard to make day in, day out purchases. And in Montpelier, there's a lot of bills that all have very, very small amounts of money attached to them. But if we pass all those bills with all those small amounts of money, that's a lot of money when it adds up. And then there are the bills that have a lot of money attached to them. So it really is an onus on the legislators to make sure that when we pass bills, we need to understand the consequences. And oftentimes those consequences is a lot of money coming out of Vermonters' pockets when we can't really afford things to begin with. So, you know, I am one of those poor Vermonters. So, you know, it's very personal to me to make sure that we're passing things that's going to be affordable. So that's really my big focus from now and probably as long as I serve. So I appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
Good morning. I'm Marty Feltis from Linden. I represent Caledonia 3, which is Linden, Sutton, Sheffield, Wheelock, and Newark. I serve on the Ways and Means Committee in the House, which is the committee that looks at taxes, determines how the income comes into the state and what kind of tax structure we want. And principally this year, we are looking at education taxes. We are looking at how the education fund is funded, and we are looking at the volume of the education fund that is necessary for our schools. You may have read that the governor has proposed what he calls a transformation plan for our education system in Vermont. And part of that, in terms of funding, is moving to a system that is called the foundation plan, as opposed to every district saying, we need this much money, we need this much money, we need this much money, and we put it all in one great big pot, and then the legislature figures out what's the tax rate necessary to fund that. The foundation plan is a fixed amount. It starts with a fixed amount per student, and then there are adders based upon the student characteristics. For instance, students in low-income families, students that need to learn English, students that participate in career technical education, students that go to small schools or to very sparsely located schools. There are different adders that would go on top of the base amount to come up with a total amount for students in a particular district. People hear that $13,002 and they think, oh my goodness, you know, I look at my school report and we spend $22,000 or $24,000 or $20,000 per student. But we've been delving into all of those figures and figuring out what's in that base, what is being covered, and then what's the value of those various adders. And by the time you get to start with 13.2, you get up to 20,000 or 22,000, depending upon the school district and the characteristics of each district. So that's what we're looking at right now, to try to determine, number one, if the formula works in a way that we want to, if it needs to be modified. The advantage of going to a foundation formula is that there would be a fixed amount that would go to the school district. And if provided it's a sufficient amount, the school district manages to that budget. They can decide how to spend the money within that bucket, as long as they adhere to, if you have English students or Spanish students that need to learn English, you obviously have to provide services for those kinds of things. But it would be basically a fixed amount. The district would budget to that amount. And in theory, the voters would not have to vote upon that, because it would be all defined by the characteristics in the district. There is a mechanism being proposed where a district could request additional money, and that would be voted on just locally, and the local school district would determine whether they want to fund that additional amount to fund their particular district. So that's what we're looking at. There are no fixed decisions yet by any means. We are trying to determine what is in those numbers, and is it sufficient, and is it covering all of the circumstances that we currently have? Are there ways to reduce that? A part of that certainly is based upon assuming a certain school size, assuming certain class sizes, assuming certain numbers of teachers for different kinds of courses, certain number of administrators that would be necessary to cover all of that. So all of that is baked into those numbers. And as I said, no decisions have been made yet, but that's basically what we are looking at in my particular committee right now. There is another thing I would like to mention that's important to some towns in our area, in that either part of the Budget Adjustment Act or a separate bill that will come out of Ways and Means is a provision to reimburse towns for the education tax that they will have paid on properties that were destroyed in the flood, and therefore abated off of the town tax rolls. The town is still responsible for paying the education tax, whether the property still exists or not. But there is a provision that in the state budget right now that would reimburse towns for that, so that you're not on the hook for that tax money that's not going to come in because you abated it. So that's something that it was done last year as well. It just didn't affect, none of the towns in our area were affected last year. Some of the towns in our area are affected this year. So that will be a help for town budgets in terms of smoothing out their education fund responsibilities. So I'll pass it on to Beth.
Thank you. Good morning, Beth Quimby. Excuse me. I'm Marty's district mate for Cal 3. And I was sorry that I had to miss the last month's breakfast due to illness, but I did watch it later. So I knew what was going on at that meeting. So this session I've been assigned to the House Education Committee. The Education Committee deals with education policy. The funding is dealt with Ways and Means, but we've tried to work very closely together because, of course, one impacts the other. I took some notes to sort of stay on task. So the vast majority of our time in committee has been spent working on exploring education transformation. No decisions have been made at this point in time. We've been gathering information relating to the existing laws and requirements, what court decisions have happened that impact education, and also so many organizations have come in to testify. So we've had testimony from Vermont Superintendents Association, Vermont Principals Association, the NEA, School Boards Association, State Board of Education, school business managers, many sessions with the Agency of Education. We've had multiple sessions, of course, with Legislative Council to look at what's already on the books. Several of our meetings have been joint sessions with either House Ways and Means, Senate Education, Senate Finance, sometimes all four committees together. So this last week, we did begin some work on a draft bill, committee bill, related to education governance and district consolidation, which is the big thing we need to do. So much of that bill right now is placeholders, really the topics that need to be covered. It has not really been fleshed out. There is some policy in there, but it's language we took from other bills to hold the place. It's not that we have, as a committee, decided, yep, that's exactly what we want. It's going to be a long process. It's just a vehicle to draft our legislation. The governor's omnibus education bill has been submitted to the Legislative Council. I think it should reach our committee probably this coming week. It should come out this week. But in addition to our work on the future state of Vermont education, we're continuing work related to the current state. We've had updates related to PCB testing, pre-K education, what's going on with the boards of cooperative education services, special education, and we spent quite a bit of time on school construction. There's a bill in front of us to restart the school construction program because, of course, if we change education in Vermont, can't really do that without construction. Several organizations have come to our committee with budget requests, as John Consenza mentioned. I am the one on the committee that's been tasked with assembling the spreadsheet of all of those requests and comparing them to last year's requests and the governor's requests, and submitting that to the committee so that we will have our recommendations for that committee by Wednesday of this week. So far, there have been over 300 bills introduced in the House chamber. 22 of those bills have been referred to the Education Committee. About half of those have been presented by the sponsor to our committee, but no action has been taken on any of those so far. Some of the topics that we've looked at so far are hazing, harassment, and bullying, epinephrine administration in schools, tuition payments, and someone brought forth a process for school closure, ban on cell phones. Several of the bills we have relate to district consolidation. So the number of districts proposed in those various bills range from as high as having 25 school districts to as low as having 1 school district for the entire state of Vermont. Transformation of education in Vermont is certainly a complicated process. It's a lot of interplay between governance, financing, curriculum, labor relations, dealing with contracts. So the Northeast Kingdom has several legislators placed on these committees of jurisdiction, and certainly reach out to any of us over the course of the session with any questions or input that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth. Senator Scott Beck, I represent the Caledonia District, which is 11 towns in Caledonia County and 1 town in Orange County, Newbury. I'm the Senate Minority Leader, and I serve on Senate Natural Resources and Energy in the morning. My morning committee and my afternoon committee is Senate Finance, and I'll stop there and save the bulk of my time for questions. Thank you.
Senator Russ Ingalls, Essex District, 25 towns. Very happy to serve that many towns. I'm proud to bring a voice to the Northeast Kingdom. I want to thank Lori Lee for putting this together, the chamber. I want to thank all of you for coming. The crowds here are just fantastic, and as I said over and over every time I come here, it's just nice to be able to talk to people who are interested in what government is, because without the people's voice, there's no direction. I also want to thank the folks that came down for NEK Day. It was a big turnout. Crowds like that get people nervous. It really does. So, so when you're down there and you're showing your voice and there's something that are very, very important, it pays to show. It really, really does. There's no question that you're not going to stop spending in Montpelier. It's not going to stop. Our jobs here, sitting at this table, is to make sure that the kingdom gets their fair share. And we do that. As Beth has said, we're spread across a lot of different committees. We work well together. All of us are informed of what's going on. We have the finger on the pulse of what's really, really important to us in a wide-ranging views, not in just one view, but trying to make sure that everybody's voices are heard, everybody's taken care of, and that it's just not one simplistic look at driving dollars to communities, but listening to communities. You don't build communities by just having one view. You gotta make sure everybody's there. I'm a chair of Senate Agriculture. It is very, I think that committee got a little political towards the last few years. Not to say they didn't do good work, but we just found out that agriculture is $4.2 billion of what the Vermont economy is. So we are an ag state. We're not a dying ag state. We are an ag state. That is the same amount of dollars that is brought in by tourism, and I think agriculture has a very big part of why people come to Vermont. So very big. We're also in Senate institutions where I was chair last year. This year I'm a senator on the committee. We're working on a kids code bill that looks, that the words say that they want to protect kids, but as we're seeing right now, it just seems to be a big mechanism to sue businesses for any missteps. But the last bit is just a point of personal privilege. I get a lot of questions asked on it. As you know, or some of you know, I've bought 7 radio stations. Everybody wants to know what I'm up to in that. It's about community. That's really what it is. It's about community. I didn't buy them because I just thought, oh, there's a chance to make a lot of money. I bought them because I really see a chance to bring community together, to get people on the airways, and also to help businesses better advertise their products. There's a lot of people that start a business and the worst thing that they do is their advertising. So I want to be able to go in there and help them and develop plans and show them how to bring people from afar to build their websites so that people will actually buy their products over the airways like we do all over the world. So that is really what I'm up to. No, it's not political. I have enough of that. It is really about community, and that's what I want to do. So thank you very much.
I get my own microphone.
Yeah, there you go. Let me help you.
I'll take that one then. You can have this one.
Okay. Always one that don't work.
Morning, everyone. Great turnout here. I'm Scott Campbell from St. Johnsbury, representing St. Johnsbury, Concord, and Kirby. Sorry I wasn't here last time. Medical appointment couldn't be moved. You know how doctors are, they're not very flexible. So I'm serving, I'm in my fourth term, I'm serving on House Energy and Digital Infrastructure, they call it now. It's returned to my first year's committee, sort of, which was Energy and Technology at the time. I've had, in the meantime, I've had 2 other committees, Corrections and Institutions, and also Transportation. So I'm kind of playing the field. In our committee, we have decided that we really want to focus on IT, which doesn't, on the House side, actually does not include digital privacy stuff. That is in the Commerce Committee. But IT includes telecom, broadband, and state IT primarily. And one of my main interests, and I think our committee's main interest at the beginning part of this term, is looking at the expenditures in state IT, which are just fantastic amounts of money. We have over $760 million. That's almost $750 million in IT projects underway right now. And I don't know if you've noticed, but sometimes we don't do IT very well in government. So we're really interested in developing a lot more oversight in how the monies get spent and whether we're really getting value for what we're spending. We're almost through the first half of this first session. This, I think it's 2 weeks actually, is what's called crossover, when bills have to be voted out of committee, out of the policy committee in each chamber, and then come to the floor and get referred to the other body. So there isn't much time left. We haven't spent a lot of time on energy issues. There were some bills to repeal and delay some portions of the various climate bills that have been passed in recent years. And we were waiting for an alternative plan that we understood was coming from the administration. We finally got that on Thursday. A bill was introduced, and so we will be digging into that in the latter part of the session. It will be too late to well, I'm not sure exactly what's going to happen with it, but we will certainly take it up and take testimony on it. So that's what I'm after.
I'm Debbie Dolgan. I represent St. Johnsbury, Concord, and Kirby, my partner. And I'm on the General Housing Committee. And I want to thank everyone for coming today. Of course, housing is very complicated. We have a wide range of needs. And of course, we're going to take care of the most vulnerable, as our governor has requested. And actually, this weekend, we're working on how much money each project would require. So it's like we're going to look at, what is the most important thing to be focused on. And in our area, we know that housing is a great need, and we have businesses that are growing, and those people need housing. What I found fascinating is that people are getting into, I'm going to call them kit homes, where they might, like the size of an airplane hangar, they might have a business where they just make all the walls, and they have different techniques for doing that. Some of them have the insulation already in. So we're looking at housing in that aspect, and it just gets complicated because you got the concrete people that got to get the foundation in before these kit houses can be delivered. And their season sometimes is cut short because of weather. So we're focused on a lot of different areas, and we're going to make it happen.
Okay, we'll open up the floor to questions. And Cynthia, may I ask your help in bringing the microphone around? Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Karen Conroy. I'm the superintendent here in St. Johnsbury. And my question, of course, is around education. And I appreciate Representative Ingles when he says we might need to make sure we get our portion in the Northeast Kingdom. And I'm just curious if you have taken, and I know the modeling has just come out just recently, or I've just seen it as of Thursday when it comes to finance. If you have taken a look at the impact on the schools and the communities in the Northeast Kingdom, because I currently am below state average for my cost per weighted pupil at $13,359, and the funding is coming in less. And when I did a quick modeling and taking out all of my students that are tuitioned, who we paid tuition for in high school, and look at the weightings without them, and it looks like a $3.8 million decrease in the funding that is coming to just our community. So I was just curious if you've looked at the impact on all of our schools.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we're looking at those models. I think it's important to understand that those models are based off a foundation amount. And I think under all proposals that I'm seeing and working on behind the scenes, there is Foundation Plus, where a local area can ask for more monies. With that being said, it's really hard to do a comparison because the governance conversation, I don't think it's hard to compare St. Johnsbury School District to what larger school district St. Johnsbury might end up in. As Representative Quimby said, we have proposals anywhere from one school district up to a couple dozen. So those apples to apples comparisons are really difficult to make right now. But maybe Beth wants to add.
I would just add that all our meetings and all our testimony and all our documents and all our committees are posted on the legislative website. And on Friday, February 14th, I think it was, Nate Levinson from K-12 Solutions, who is a former superintendent, has worked with over 300 school districts across the country, 20 in the state of Vermont, very involved in Act 46, did a line-by-line budget for using the foundation formula and a made-up school district using state averages. I was and again, and what he liked about it, he said a different superintendent would make different decisions based on the needs of their community. So it might be worth taking a watch. I liked it, of course, because it was nice and concrete numbers, spreadsheet. Here's what I did with it, and here's what I found. And there were some questions because there are other things besides that. There's categorical grants on top of all of that for certain items, such as perhaps transportation, special education, other things that are like almost a block grant on top of both the foundation and the weights.
I would just comment that yes, Karen, I looked at St. Johnsbury and I looked at Kingdom East, and we have this great big huge humongous spreadsheet that starts with the 13.2, and then it figures out how many kids you have in this grade and this grade and this grade, and how many are economically disadvantaged, and how many speak Spanish, and how many all through this thing. But just based upon those numbers that have been the suggested figures, it would come out with $20,000 per student from the St. Johnsbury district of the bodies, not the weighted bodies, but the bodies that are there. And it compares to what you currently spend, which is $22 million. And so yes, there's a gap there, but the question is, are the factors all really the way that we want them? Or in an instance, would that be something where the district would say, okay, we want to vote for another $2 million extra because we think it's necessary, and that sort of thing. It's a similar thing with Kingdom East. Kingdom East, under the formula, would receive $22,000 per student, real body as opposed to a weighted body, and they currently spend $24,000. But in both of those figures, it includes the secondary students because you pay the tuition, you get the money in and you pay the tuition out to the secondary school. There have been people who raise the question, well, okay, yeah, if you only get, $24,000 and St. Johnsbury Academy needs a different amount or Linden Institute needs a different amount, we're going to have to figure out how to make that work as well. But I've looked at them, and most school districts, just under this first blush, are plus or minus 5% by using the foundation formula compared to what they actually spend today. Some, the very small schools are getting more money than they currently spend, and they probably need that more money. They've been very, very frugal. And some of the bigger schools would be getting much less. And so all those things we have to look at.
I'm not an expert on education. I just have what I really want, what I really wish for the kingdom, which is for the kids in Canaan to have the same education as the kids in Shelburne. I have not a problem of spending $2.4 billion on education. None whatsoever. We just need better results. And the way that we're going about it right now, it's not better results. We're in the middle of the pack, and we're just spending a lot of money on things that just aren't necessary or needed, and we just have to figure that out. But I'm not for one to sit here and say, well, we just have to cut the cost of education. We just have to do education smarter, better, and get better results. As is right now, we're going to spend $77 million just to buy down the education tax so that it goes to zero this year. $77 million just to buy down that tax. Can you imagine what we could do with $77 million thrown back in there in a functionable way, not just to buy down the tax? So I think that you're going to be very well represented here. I look across this table as far as the people that are there in the trenches and fighting, and we're going to see a lot more things roll out. But I know that we need to do something different, and I think that we have the first chance in 50 years since they started closing single schoolhouses down, we have a chance to do this right in a way that we can grow our kids.
And another question? Dana? Yep.
Excuse me. Good morning, Dana Garay. Question for Scott, Representative Campbell. You mentioned the governor has proposed an alternative plan regarding energy. Just wondering if you had a chance to look at it at all, and the things you like and the things you might not like.
Thanks, Dana. I have read through it. It's a 39-page bill, something like that. There are a number of elements to it that would roll back work that we've done in the Global Warming Solutions Act and the Affordable Heat Act, which are focused really, to say again, really focused on helping Vermont transition, follow the transition, helping Vermont cope with the impacts, the economic impacts actually, not just the environmental impacts, but the economic impacts of the energy transition that is happening globally. It's put in terms inside the building in terms of greenhouse gas reductions and all of that, but to me, really, the focus is on the economic side. So we know, for example, that electric cars are coming eventually. They're getting better, but we need to prepare for that, which requires an infrastructure for people to be able to charge cars, and especially people who don't have their own driveway, people who are renters or living in multifamily apartment buildings. We need to figure out a way for them to be able to charge at home, because that's what really makes an electric vehicle a viable option. Other things, let's see, there are things that we can talk about, I think, to compromise on perhaps dates, for example, when we are due to meet certain requirements. There are other things that maybe we would not want to compromise on, but we're just going to have to see. We just got the bill, as I said, on Thursday, and we're deep in my committee, deeply involved in these IT issues. Another bill that we're working on in committee is a bill that would really focus directly on gathering data that is already collected, sort of putting data that's already collected in various state agencies and departments, and trying to paint a picture of what that economic impact is on Vermonters. So those are the things we're really focused on right now. We're also going to wait and see what the Senate passes over. I know they're working, the Natural Resources and Energy Committee on the Senate side is working on a bill around electric generation, what's called standard offer, where a developer can build a generating station, and if it meets certain criteria, they could contract for a certain amount of money, price per kilowatt hour, actually megawatt hour, that then utilities around the state would agree to pay. And also perhaps a resurrected group, what's called group net metering or community solar program that was ended with the RES bill, the Renewable Energy Standard bill that was passed last year. So those are things that are also actually in the governor's bill, and I'm hopeful that we're going to find ways to move forward with them.
More specifically, Michael Harrow from St. Johnsbury Center, Vermont. House Bill H62 proposes to repeal the Global Warming Solutions Act, and in the Senate, S68 proposes to repeal the Affordable Heat Act. I'd like to know what this panel is going to do in order to make sure those bills make it past the crossover point and have their day out in the public. I'd like to see both of them repealed. I'm pretty sure I know where you stand, Scott, and I was kind of hoping that we get some alternative.
Yeah, sure. Well, I just want to say that we did hear H62 introduced in our committee, and my question is, well, what's the alternative plan? Because we have to have some plan. We have to cope with the global climate destabilization, and what's the plan? There hasn't been one until the governor's bill that just came out, as I say, last Thursday. So we'll work through that plan.
The Senate tomorrow, there will be a motion to remove, is it Senate Bill 68? Yeah, 68 from the Natural Resources and Energy Committee. The chair of that committee will not take any testimony on that bill, so there will be a motion to bring it to the floor. And if that motion succeeds, we'll advance it for action and hopefully get rid of the clean heat standard.
And just a little bit of a response to Scott, we're the cleanest state in the nation already. We do our fair share, and all of you should be applauded for what you do. 647,000 people will not and cannot change climate. Cannot. You just cannot. We spend $750 million a year on these fantastical dreams that we can somehow make the winds not blow and the sun not shine, and it just can't happen. But I get it. I would agree to. I would be very happy to keep up the clean goals of keeping Vermont very, very clean. $350 million. Let us have the other $350 million back and put it back in the middle part of our state so that we can fund our schools and fund transit and keep people housed and keep older folks' homes heated and do all the things that we need to do as society to make sure that the people that can't advocate for themselves have the monies to do that. So we do enough as far as with climate goals. If you listen to the other side, it's like we don't do nothing. That we're just all out there doing terrible things to the climate. And we are the cleanest state in the nation. We do our fair share.
Yes, hi, Allison Despathy. And just as a follow-up to that, we do have the comprehensive energy plan, so we do actually have a backup plan. And my question is for anyone, but Representative Campbell, because you are vice chair of the House Committee on Energy and Digital Infrastructure, it's actually in your power to move something to help us. We have House Bill number 52, which is a small little tweak to the Global Warming Solutions Act, which would remove the provision for us to be sued for not meeting these dates that are unrealistic. It's been in the committee since the beginning of the session, and it would fix everything, including the clean heat standard. I'm just wondering if you will take it in your power to try to really move that through, make that shift, because we do have a backup plan in place. Thank you.
Thank you, Allison. The so-called private right of action is a provision that was included in the original bill on the advice of people from Massachusetts who had a Global Warming Solutions Act, their version of Global Warming Solutions Act, a decade previously. And the point of including that provision was really to channel any potential lawsuits, not to throw open the doors to lawsuits. The provision requires that any lawsuit be brought on topic, on what the bill does, or what the government does or has done or hasn't done. So it limits any suits to certain topics, to certain timing. In other words, the suits would have to be brought within a certain amount of time. And it limits the remedies that would be available. So there's no damages involved. There's nobody that's going to be suing to try to make some money. The remedies would be just the court requiring the Agency of Natural Resources to do rulemaking. So it's an important accountability matter. We are going to hear from the Conservation Law Foundation on, I think it's this coming Thursday, about more details about this provision in the bill or in the law, and I guess we'll make a decision then about whether to move H52 any further. But repealing that provision in the Global Warming Solutions Act is also included in the governor's bill, so they will get testimony later in the session.
I have a question from Pat Shine. She had sent an email to me and not able to be here. It was specifically to Senator Ingalls and Representative Dolgan. Questions about education. One was, what are your thoughts about eliminating the current supervisory union model and replacing it with 5 regional school districts? Also, specifically electing school board members for each of these 5 regional school districts instead of the current system of electing school board members. Eliminating the State Board of Education, and then regarding the Universal Schools Meals Program, about what our families will do.
So a lot going there. So I am really, this is where I'm at with all the education stuff. I'm listening. I'm really listening. And then what I am apt to do is I'm apt to say, okay, well, let me show you what we're doing right now. And I hold up the map that shows the 5 districts. And then, oh, okay, you want an alternative plan. Okay, well, let me show you the alternative plan. Then I'll hold up what we're doing right now. And every time I say, oh no, we can't do that. Let's go back to the map of the 5 districts and let's look at that and let's look harder. We know we're in a mess. We're trying, every fix that we do, it's throwing onto a top-heavy system that just doesn't work. It fails miserably. And so we're looking as far as, we're looking at everything. We're tearing it right down to the studs. Like I said, this is as important as when and the same type of discussions as what we had when we started closing single-room schoolhouses. I'm not in here advocating to just cut money out of education. I think that education in the most poorest part of the state is what will lift us all and to make us competitive with the rest of the world. So I think there's still a lot more answers to do, to found out, to discuss, let the committees of jurisdiction figure all that out, bring it back to you. I think we're starting to get now to the point where they're starting to bring things forward. We're starting to have discussions on it. There's a lot more talking. They're talking about us being there past June. I hope that don't happen. But, we'll stay as long as we need to do to make it work. But it needs to work this time. It really, really does. To take that $77 million just to spend that money just to buy down the rate and get nothing for it, it's just foolish spending. We have a lot more to do.
I don't know. Maybe she meant Representative Quimby. I'm not sure. If the email said Dolgan, but it might have.
So I don't know. There was a lot in there, so I'm not sure I remember everything that was in there.
Meals.
So the day after the governor's plan was released, we actually had lunch with the Superintendents Association because they were having their annual meeting, and was told flat out it needs to be districts, not SUs. You need to change and not have the supervisory union structure to make this work. So that's what we were told that next morning, which actually surprised me. What else was in there? Oh, the elimination of the State Board of Education. I don't believe, and again, it's a proposal. No decisions have been made. It doesn't call for the elimination of the State Board of Education. It does talk about changing some of the rulemaking to the AOE. And we've spoken both with the Agency of Education and the State Board of Education has discussed with our committee that alignment of rulemaking needs to happen. The State Board of Education was just in this week with their budget request to help fund that a lot of their rules are out of date, need to be updated. Some rules they feel should stay with the State Board and some shouldn't and should go to the AOE. And delineating who is responsible for what since the department became an agency several years ago needs to happen.
And the final piece was the school meals.
School meals is actually in the Agriculture, Food Resiliency, and Forestry Committee's jurisdiction. So, it came in under budget for sure this time. And the Ag Committee did take testimony, and a lot of the money that funds that is federal dollars. But we're a little concerned right now about how many federal dollars we'll actually be able to pull down in this climate. So.
And that actually leads to the question that we also got online about to the state of our federal, the funds that are coming in, and it's talking about how are our legislators preparing for the threats of funding cuts coming from the current administration, and a long list of obviously many of our businesses, organizations rely on those funds. So how can we prepare?
I would have been very happy if you started the conversation or response here, but I mentioned very briefly at the beginning here, letting folks know that I'm on the Appropriations Committee, and seriously, what all the agencies and departments are doing is taking stock of what federal monies do come through them to provide, needed services here for everyone here in the state of Vermont here. And there's been a lot of announcements made about what the federal government's been doing here, and monitoring and tracking those current funds that are currently in place. Have been Secretary of Human Services, for example, here, Secretary of Administration. They've both come in to testify before our committee, and that's been the common message that they've been sharing here with us. Keeping track of how the state of Vermont may be affected by either an elimination of federal funds or soon to be, or if there's going to be a pause on some of those things. And it's ranged from all areas here in the state of Vermont. And I'll give you an example here that some of us may not be thinking about here, but relatively recently here, U.S. Forest Service released 3,400 employees. We have the Green Mountain National Forest here in our state. And we had the Natural Resources Agency before us here just about a week ago here, and one of the questions that I asked is how might that be affecting us here in the state of Vermont? But there are federal funds that come to the U.S. Forest Service to help natural resources, and one of the questions I asked is how might the communication between Green Mountain National Forest and our agencies be affected by that? And the answer was we don't know yet. And I think that's a huge concern. Having said that, our secretaries have been reaching out here to federal representatives here, our congressional folks here as well, to stay on top of this the best they possibly can. So we're reaching out to maintain our communication here, again, for the purposes of monitoring and tracking. A lot of the federal stuff coming along, we may not know what that's going to be until a little bit later into the session here, later in March and into April. So there are some unknowns out there, but we are moving forward here with preparing the budget here for the next fiscal year. And that's what we're responsible for doing. And we may have to respond differently here based on what we end up coming up with the final, or at least a version of what the fiscal year is going to look like here budgetarily.
So I think it's important to understand the Budget Adjustment Act, which John has referred to earlier. Right now, there's about $20 million of money that was not appropriated for FY25. It's come in. And usually the Budget Adjustment Act is a true-up. What's happened in the Budget Adjustment Act this year is the majority has decided that they want to spend that $20 million. They want to appropriate it, mostly on Vermont Housing Conservation Board, even though they have all the money they need for 25, and are in the governor's budget funded at 100% for FY26, and a continuation of the motel program, which has not worked very well, 124 deaths in the last 5 years in that program. The governor's position is we should not spend that $20 million appropriate that $20 million right now. Instead, we should hold on to that money because we don't really understand what's going on in Washington, D.C. right now and how we might need to deploy $20 million. Because once we appropriate it, it's gone. And it might not be for something that we value in a week or a month or 2 months from now as this federal situation unfolds. So that's really what the disagreement is in the Budget Adjustment Act. That's why Republicans and the governor have 100% voted against this, and the majority party has voted for it. I don't know if they're unanimous in that support, but that is the disagreement right now. One group wants to spend the money, get it out the door right now to these two programs. The other wants to hold on to it because we don't really understand what's going on down in Washington, D.C. As to the previous conversation about supervisory unions, I just want to make sure everybody understands there's two reasons for supervisory unions. One is so that very small districts could remain very small districts that didn't have the size to have their own superintendent's office, and the supervisory union would provide those superintendent services. That rationale is probably going to go by the wayside. The other reason for supervisory unions is so that districts of different structures can coexist in the same larger unit. And what that means is towns that offer public tuition for some or all grades can exist in the same administrative unit as towns that do it differently, okay? It's no surprise that the VSA and other organizations in Vermont that are hostile to public tuition want to get rid of the supervisory union structure because they know that provides no path forward for towns and school districts that currently public tuition. That's why there's support that. Okay, so I just want to throw that out there so everybody understands what's really going on.
Oops, question. I'll be with you just a second. So I wasn't going to talk because I'm not really very educated about the political situation, but I do want to say something to Senator Russ. I worked for 10 years as a paraeducator in St. Johnsbury. I want to push back a little bit about the miserable state of education that you're describing. So I worked in the special ed area, and special ed is also, is often synonymous with poverty. So I worked with homeless kids. I worked with kids who are living with their grandparents because there was no other adult, great-grandparents, there was no other stable adult for them to live with. I worked with kids who went through the system, who became responsible adults, working adults. And I don't believe without the kind of support that they were given, I think they'd be in jail, you know? And yeah, it's expensive because, you know, the rubber meets the roads when the kids come into the classroom. However else their families have failed, they come into the classroom and they are taken in and, you know, brought into being, you know, reasonable people who can relate to other people, who get, you know, authentic, good response from adults, which they may not be getting at home. And there's so much success in this system, and I just hate to hear everybody trash teachers, trash the system. It's so expensive. Vermont does a tremendous job with their kids. We came from Boston. Vermont is a humane and wonderful state as far as how the kids here are being treated. And I just say, you're listening, great. Go into the classroom. It's not all spreadsheets and money. See what the teachers are up against. See what the paraeducators are up against.
Can I ask you to leave it to a question?
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry. Thank you.
Okay.
I take your point very well, but I just want to make sure we can get the rest of our questions in.
So thank you for what you do, and I have not ever trashed a teacher, ever. But the system is broken, and it really is. And there is a lot of good things that happen. There really, really are. But I'm just going to leave it at this. The system is broken. We're spending way too much money without the results, and there are tremendous people. And you have heard me say today, I'd be fine spending every damned penny that we're spending right now if we have just better results, if we have a better system that treats all of Vermonters fair all the way through, because as of right now, what we have isn't, and it's unsustainable. The 18% that went up, it was going to go up another 7 or 8%. We had to buy that down, and it still hasn't solved anything. And that money hasn't solved anything. We are spending way too much money without the results that we need to be competitive in the world. And there is a better way. We're going to find it. But thank you for what you've done. Thank you for all the teachers for what you've done. This isn't a teacher problem. This is the fundamental problem of how the system is, and it set you up for failure. Hopefully we fix that with a lot of input from a lot of people, and I am still listening. And I will continue to listen until we find the way. But I can damn well tell you that when it's all said and done, the kingdom will be getting their fair share, and they will not be left behind.
I'm Tom Zabrowski from Danville, and I noticed our representative is not here. I presume he has an excuse since you don't have a card for him.
Is that Representative Burt?
Yes, it is.
He does have an excuse.
Okay.
Yes.
So,
and he was here last month.
I did go through the list of bills he's supporting, and one thing that disturbs me, particularly with the national situation, is JR with Joint Resolution H1, which is a bill to, there's an alternative way of amending the U.S. Constitution, which is that 2/3 of the state legislatures propose a constitutional convention. They can amend the Constitution. And he's supporting that bill. And I'm just wondering, in the sense of this group, how many people here would support that bill, that resolution, excuse me.
I haven't seen the resolution. It sounds like it might be referring to the Convention of States, which I don't support the Convention of States idea, but I haven't read the resolution.
I think we have time for one more question. The gentleman in the back.
Hi, I'm David Tucker from Waterford, and I just wanted to throw out in terms of education funding, and it seems to me that 1 District 5, District 23, 127 districts is rearranging the deck chairs. That the real driving cost to education, a huge part is rising healthcare costs. And I'd like to hear some feedback on how that's going to be addressed, because I think I think playing with the districts isn't going to solve anything. I think we'll be back here in 3 years talking about rising costs and what are we going to do, and the system's broken. I just wanted to throw that out. So anybody who wants to respond, that'd be great.
Yeah, I'll respond, David. The increase in the premium cost is definitely a causal factor in the education spending. But the total cost that gets spent on education, there's two factors there, right? And that's the number of people you employ and the cost of the premium. Right now, Vermont has the lowest staffing in the country, 3.63 to 1 in our schools. The next lowest is 4.8, that's Maine. I'd also point out that the plan that the teachers, educators are on is a terribly rich plan also right now. I mean, it's gone far beyond a Cadillac plan. It's a $44,000 plan. It's very, very rich, and I think there are ways to get the teachers the same health care that they have right now using a different structure. And I think people are looking into that to get that cost down from $44,000, which is, I would suspect that nobody in this room, unless you're an educator, has a health care plan that the cost is $44,000. That's really, really extraordinary.
So I am on the healthcare committee. So this is something that we have been talking a lot about. We, in our committee, we are currently discussing a committee bill. So there's two ways that bills can be introduced. One, they can be introduced by senators and representatives, just straight into the chamber, then they get referred to a committee. But then a committee itself can also design a bill and then introduce that bill as a committee. So we are currently working on a committee bill. It doesn't have a number, so it is unfortunately a little difficult for the public to find. If you contact me, I'm very happy to send you the direct link to it, because otherwise you kind of have to look through the files on the state website, because it doesn't have a number, because it hasn't been introduced yet. But that committee bill is going to do a lot of things. It's extremely broad, and it does a lot of stuff. It gives a lot more regulatory power to the Green Mountain Care Board, which, especially in my district, is not a very popular way to go forward. It gives more resources and funding to the Green Mountain Care Board, a lot more regulatory oversight over hospitals and how they manage their budgets, and also their strategic plans of action. It also will be putting forward a plan requiring our hospitals to adopt reference-based pricing and global budgets. So reference-based pricing is a little more complicated than global budgets, so I'll explain that one first. So global budgets is essentially the hospital will be given a lump sum of money, and then they can kind of manage all the services that they provide from that lump sum of money. And there are advantages to that, and there's advantages and disadvantages to all the different payer systems. And we are moving, the state is moving towards the AHEAD model. They're still working out the exact specifics of how that's going to be happening through the Department of Health. But our committee bill, it is looking to address the rising costs of healthcare in Vermont, and as well as the insurance solvency. One of those is through electronic medical records. So if you move between different healthcare providers, there's a lot of redundancy and a lot of inefficiencies. So it's trying to do that. I do have some concerns with the committee bill as of right now. One of the things that we're not doing as much of is, I think we're not really working with the hospitals as much as we should be. The hospitals are the ones that provide the health care, yet in my perspective, they've been left out of the conversation a little too much. I think we've only heard testimony from the Association of Vermont Hospitals and Health Systems once. And they gave a pretty lengthy report, and I think it's safe to say that they have some concerns about the committee bill and the effect that it's going to have on the hospitals. A lot of the people here, I'm sure, are aware of the Oliver Wyman report that was authored under Act 167 from the last couple of years, and that proposes a pretty sweeping change to our healthcare system, for better or for worse. It is extremely complicated, and there's pros and cons to. Yeah, I'm trying to look at you directly here. So there's a lot of pros and cons for every different path that we take. But at the end of the day, I think we need to be working with our hospitals, making sure that that they're being included in the conversation, because right now, from what I've been made aware, a lot of the hospitals, if not all of them, are actually working on the global budgeting themselves. They're working on the reference-based pricing themselves, and AHS is working on the EMR situation. Yet I've been told that we shouldn't just leave it up to those groups to do it themselves. We need something in statute to make sure that they get it done, which I don't know if I agree with that perspective. If they're already doing it themselves, I think we should have some more trust for them. If we're asking them to trust us, we also need to trust them. So I support our rural hospitals, and bottom line, North Country can't close, NVRH can't close, Copley can't close. We need our rural hospitals because in the event of a woman going into labor, that you need to be close by. In the event of an emergency, you need to be close by. We live in a very rural area with lots of farms. If somebody gets their arm injured in a combine, and you're bleeding out, you need to be able to get to an emergency room. So bottom line, rural hospitals need to be supported, and that's my perspective in all my conversations on the healthcare committee. I'm hoping that our committee bill can address the rising cost of healthcare, and I think that it will to a degree. But I do think that the hospitals need to be really included in the conversation to make sure that we're not going to be pushing them over the edge of the cliff by trying to lower costs. So, yeah.
Thank you. Oh, do you want to say one more thing? Because we're after 9 o'clock. I don't want to keep you.
This always happens to me. So Sam gave far more detail than I want to talk about. I just want to acknowledge that the healthcare system we know is in terrible shape. It's been in terrible shape for a long time, and it's a major driver of costs, not only in the education system, but for every business in the state, every person in the state, and we've really got to do something about it, and I'll leave it at that.
Thank you all. The next legislative breakfast will be March 31st. Thank you again for coming today.